Hello friends, it's Kayla. This is my 5th year doing Booktuber favorites, where I spend the month of January reading the books mentioned in favorites videos from the year prior. I find people who have the most in common with me and I read something that was mentioned in their favorites. This year, I'm switching it up a little bit. Over the years, I have found more and more people and more things in common, and the TBR just grows and grows. And the last couple years, I've also included Bookstagrammers, and some of them even go better than the Booktubers, and I find more in common with them. So I thought I would make them battle. So this is the first in a 4-part video series where all of the social medias where I spend the most time are put head to head. And I'm gonna read 5, I think, books in each video. We've got Booktube, Bookstagram, and BookTok, where I've been spending more time. And then the reason I have a 4th video is because I put out a survey to my channel members just for fun to see their top 10, and I have a lot in common with them. So they're gonna get their own dedicated 4th episode in the series. I'll talk about the rules later, the ranking system, and how we're gonna decide who wins by the end. But today we're talking Booktube. As always, I'll have the playlist linked down below of every favorites video that showed up in my subscription box in case you want to find new people to follow. The first person on my list of 5 is Deja. Deja and I had 8 reads in common, so we need to find something to read from her. I include honorable mentions, and anything in somebody's favorites video counts.
Hey everybody, my name is Deja and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my favorite books of 2023.
What I love about Deja is there's a broad range of genres present, which I also read. I don't think our taste in thriller and horror always aligns, but when it does, it's so good. She also has a few authors to choose from that I haven't liked books from in the past.
Them by McKay Watson. I've never had a book make me throw up before, but this one did that. No One Writes for Free by Judith Sonnet. This one has a lot. It goes very dark, very extreme.
I'm starting to think I should choose a romance because where we line up the most is literary horror, but there's nothing else here for me to choose from. I've read them all. Since she has a 7-year slip, which I also enjoyed, let's see romance thoughts.
Go by Alexandria House. This is one that I absolutely loved. It is a hockey romance. What a Match by Mimi Grace. She signs up for this matchmaking service, but she does have her brother's grumpy best friend sleeping on her couch.
This is either setting myself up for failure or success, but I think I'm gonna go with What a Match. The next highest amount I have in common with somebody is Ashley with 9.
This year I needed 15.
Another good mix of thrillers and romance here. The thrillers that we have in common, over the top stuff, some more literary horror, that's exciting.
The Looking Glass Sound by Katrina Ward.
I've never given Katrina Ward a high rating. I've given her a 3 twice, but I feel like I could be convinced to read one more.
It's more of a really slow burn psychological story about friendship. And lastly is The Center by Aisha Manazir.
Oh, I'm gonna pick The Center. I've had that on my radar. I haven't purchased it. It's a short, I think it's a shorter novella. I'm obsessed with the cover, and that's in her #1 spot. Next, we have a creator I found because of her favorites video. When I skimmed through this, I scrubbed through it a couple weeks ago, I wrote down that we had 11 in common.
We need to come together and talk about my favorite books.
I definitely see the wild and wacky that I'm into represented here. Also some romance, thrillers, horror. I had One's Company on my radar for a bit, but it's also about a show that I've never seen and don't care to see, so I don't know if that would be the right choice.
Scorched Grace by Margot Dawahi. This book is a mystery about a nun, but she's kind of a bad nun.
This one definitely sounds intriguing to me. The ones we have in common are so good.
Disorientation by Elaine Shea Chow is a
I've seen this cover around.
A satirical story about academia.
Naturally, because there's a lot of horror represented here, I feel like I should pick a horror, but the ones on here aren't on my TBR. Okay, I have a couple to choose from. I don't feel like committing to one. Maybe I'll try the first chapter of a couple. Then we have Mara. Now, Mara did a whole series of videos. After the fact, after I wrote down everything we had in common, and there was 11, she did do an official favorites video of just 10, but I think everything here can be considered, just like in my honorable mentions, like all of those 64 books can be considered favorites. So I will pick something from her top 10, which I haven't actually watched, but I'll tell you the things that we had in common from her video. So she did a mystery video. We had Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, The Last Word, Wrong Place, Wrong Time. In her sci-fi and fantasy video, she mentioned The Adventures of Mina al-Sarafi, the Broken Earth trilogy, and Mammoths at the Gates. In horror, there was A Dowry of Blood. For general fiction, we had in common The Beautiful Ones, Notes on an Execution, Out There, and Sea of Tranquility. But let's check out the official favorite books.
Today we are here to talk about the best of the best. This encapsulates a lot of what I like in horror.
Ooh, that's
in
on my
terms of its
TBR.
theming, its inventiveness, and its setting, characters. Like, it all really worked for me. The Last Quintista by Donna Barbara Iguera is a middle grade sci-fi book that will break you in the best way possible.
Okay, some of these are part of series that I haven't planned on reading. Lone Women is definitely the one I'm gravitating towards because I want to read it. Then lastly, with the most in common, same as last year, I think, is Shawnee with 14.
It's time to talk about my favorite books of the year.
Another great representation of different genres and different vibes. Our horror and weirdness taste definitely aligns.
And next I'll talk about a horror book. This one is The Center by Aisha Manazir Siddiqui.
Right, I knew that I saw The Center in someone else's video. So this is why, I just remembered, this is why I was going to explore more people, because I figured I could read this one for both of these creators. And then I'm representing two booktubers with one book, and then I could watch more videos. That's like one of the only books in her entire top favorites that I haven't already read. So I've represented 5 booktubers and I have 4 books chosen. I want one more book, and what I'm gonna do is now check out the next like 10, because I had 10 people with 7 books in common with me, which is so much. So I don't know if I should pick one from each person, put it in a hat and pull one out, or see which is mentioned the most. But let's start with Lexi.
I will be sharing with you my top 10 best books of the year. Also, Kayla, if you're watching this, hi. These are the top 10 books that I think you should maybe potentially try reading.
Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, Lost and Women and Found, 7 Days in June, Half a Soul. I'm reading this soon for my book club. There's definitely a vibe here that's like a new vibe for me that we have in common. So in her video, I see Tress of the Emerald Sea, which I feel like has that light fantasy vibe, and 6 Crimson Cranes, which I also don't know too much about, but I think it's the similar vibe. And also The Rules of Magic, which maybe I own. Next up,
my top 10 favorite books of 2023. Hey everyone, it's Jenny and welcome back to my channel. This story ain't over.
Jenny and I had things in common like Emily Wilde, Yellowface, Natural Beauty, Dowry of Blood, Finley Donovan, In the Dream House. Again, a whole plethora of genres, and I feel like I could go with The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, maybe Cleopatra and Frankenstein. Also with 7 in common, we have Riley.
Today, I'm finally going to be sharing my top favorite books that I read in 2023.
Only a couple here to choose from I haven't already read. Her number 1 though is a short novella. Look at the cover.
Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. So this is a romantic, sapphic, cottagecore horror book.
I do have that on my TBR shelf, so if I was reading one book from every person, that's what I would choose from hers. We've got Summer with 7 in common.
Hi, it's Summer, and these are my favorite books that I read this year. I love this book so much.
Emily Wilde making a strong showing. A lot of our favorites in common I gave a 4. I consider anything that I gave a 4 or a 5 something I have in common with somebody. I think the only one here I'd be interested in is The Wishing Game. There's a couple that I haven't read, but they're not really calling to me, so I think I'd pick up that one. Let's check out Tatiana. Beautiful lighting, beautiful, just the camera work. It's crisp, stunning.
I'm going to be breaking these up into categories, which you can jump around using the menu down below.
Okay, hers is organized by genre. I don't think our horror is like half aligning. Fantasy, Another Adventures of Mina al-Sarafi. Emily Wilde showing up again. Legends and Lattes, Naturally. Ooh, Tress of the Emerald Sea. That edition is so pretty.
This is a standalone that is inspired by the Princess Bride movie, where the princess goes to save the day. Like,
honestly, this one is hard. There's quite a few different fantasy books that I've never even really heard of, but if they align with like the soft, cozy, fairy tale-like quality that I'm into lately, I could really pick any of these. We of course can't forget about Gabby. 7 in common this year.
My favorite books of 2023. This is one of my favorite videos to make at the end of every single year.
We really lined up with our literary horror, Monstrilio, Our Share of Night. We're aligning in thrillers, we're aligning in general fiction, we're aligning in romance. I think something that she's talked about this year that I was intrigued by was a short story collection called At Home with the Horrors, and she said it's one of the best anthologies she's read. So I would probably pick that. one. Sydney also had 7 in common.
Today we're talking about my best books of 2023. We have quite the list to get into. We will just go with what's on top here, and it is The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young, Trust of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson, The Crane Husband by Kelly Barnhill, None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, The Fine Print by Lauren Asher.
So many genres to choose from again. Let's take a look at Kenya.
The best books that I read this year.
Our 7 that lined up are horror, general fiction, thriller, and romance. I don't know if there's anything calling to me. Maybe The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, actually. And lastly, Steph.
This list is comprised of 10 categories. We have best fantasy, best sci-fi, best horror, best mystery.
We lined up with horror, sci-fi, romance, thriller, fantasy. She also has Amina Al-Sarafi. I think the only book she has here on my radar, actually on my TBR, is The Vanished Birds. So I would definitely pick that one. And now I have a big decision to make. As the video that's kicking off the entire series, I want it to perfectly encapsulate the goal. So I should pick something that showed up the most because I have the most in common with all of these people. This book showed up 4 times, but do I want to read it as much as some of the other options that I already own? No. But the thing is, I can't be trusted. I don't even know my own reading taste. So I need to go with the goal of the series. I'm gonna pick Trust of the Emerald Sea. It's a super popular book. It's a super popular author. It was in the Goodreads Choice Awards. If I'm gonna love something, it's probably gonna be that one. I feel like this is risky, but I have my 5 books now. I'm gonna pick them up. I'm gonna start reading. If a book gets a 4 or 5 star, then it gets 1 star towards the video. The video can get anywhere from 1 to 5 stars. If I end up giving a book a 3, it's gonna get half a star. So let's say in this case, I love The Center, I love Trust of the Emerald Sea, I like Lone Women, and I hated What a Match and Disorientation. I feel like that's what I'm gravitating towards. Booktube, as a collective, would then receive 2.5 stars towards its ranking, and then all of the other videos will get their own ranking. They'll be pit against each other. We see what platform wins. I will check in with you when I start reading.
A big favorite of mine, and that would be Trust of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson.
This book has found family, it has danger, it has whimsy, it has humor.
The story itself kind of almost feels like you're being told a bedtime story, which I really enjoyed a lot.
It has these great world building concepts in a small, easy to digest package.
Before I give you my first official reading update, that I am reading Trust of the Emerald Sea and loving it, and that I'm in my pirate era, I need to update you on something very important, which is that I was editing and I realized I didn't have 10 people and Trust was not mentioned 4 times. It was mentioned 3 because I only had 9 people and my backwards math was incorrect, but it's okay because somebody I just subscribed to recently put out their favorites video. Samantha, she just did this whole video project reading all of the Literally Dead book club picks over the past 4 years. I subscribed, she put out a favorites video, and in that favorites video, Tress is there. So I do now actually have 4 people, but look at how many we have in common. These were all her 5 stars of the year, which I'm considering favorites because she didn't do another favorites video. So like the bracket that she's creating here, I'm taking as that. But here we have 12 favorites in common. And then moving to our honorable mentions, let's see what she has to say.
Here we have my contenders, some of the best books I've read, the 5-star girlies. And then I also have an honorables mention page of books that I gave a high 4 stars, had a lot of fun with. Trust of the Emerald Sea, it's just really good. I really liked it.
Catherine House and House of Leaves is on here, bringing our total to 14. And like I said, Trust of the Emerald Sea is there, so everything is now perfect. Including, yes, my experience with Trust of the Emerald Sea, halfway through, having a great time. With that said, I'm not tabbing anything. It's not something that I'm like, ooh, this scene and that character and this passage, but I'm just having fun, which is also true with these 2 books that I feel like combined kind of make up Trust of the Emerald Sea in a way. Obviously this was on everybody's favorites. It's a pirate story, The Princess Bride. I didn't tap these either. They were just fun, like adventure stories that I was in and I was enjoying. And that is how I feel about this. I didn't realize this was a pirate story. Like, don't ask me how, I don't know. Basically we meet Tress as a young woman. She collects cups, it's very cute. And she has this childhood friend and just before they kind of become something, we don't really know their dynamic, he leaves, gets taken by his family, whisked away, and we're not following him. We're actually reading from a narrator who is inside the story themselves, just like this one, which is a writing style I really like. It's just like this fairy tale quality that is after the fact telling all of these tales. I have certain theories about certain things that I'm not going to get into, but I will tell you if I was right by the end about my early predictions. So we learn that he's been taken away and his family keeps trying to set him up with different people. They're like royalty or whatever. He's very important. She is not. And he has denied all of these relationships. And then their family comes back. This is all pretty early on and I still haven't read the synopsis, so I don't know what's a spoiler and what's not. But his family comes back and she thinks that the son is coming back with them, but instead they have a different guy in their family. And so she realizes this man, her friend, is missing. She doesn't know what came of him, of relationships that he is or isn't in. And then she finds out that okay, it is here. And also, this is beautiful, has come into contact with the sorcerer. So she is part of this midnight sea and there's all these different seas and there's all these different ships. So Tress is now on this adventure of trying to get to the sorceress, trying to find her friend, her childhood friend Charlie, to see what came of him, to see if he is in danger, because like she's a sorceress, she needs to like go protect him. So she's on these different ships and she's just making her way and she's going through these different seas and learning about the dangers of the sea. And I paused here because it was chapter 25, as short as it was, that really sold me. There was something about the writing style of this particular portion that I went from just having a nice time and having a good time learning stuff to I really love this writing style. And I read from Brandon Sanderson once last year with Skyward. It's my only experience with him. I know like everybody loves his stuff. This, everyone says, is quite different. And I don't know anything about him and his work and his projects and whatever. But I know some people have recommended this to me specifically because it is a different writing style than his other stuff and like doesn't even feel like it was written by him, according to others. If we kick this whole thing off with like a 5-star, wouldn't that be crazy? Great news. I'm giving Tress of the Emerald Sea a 4-star. Maybe it just sounded like I was gonna give it a 5. I don't know that a book like this, and Amina, which I consider like the same as far as my enjoyment goes of this adventure story, I don't know if I would ever get a 5. So don't take that as a diss if this was like one of your favorite books. I'm chopping asparagus so you know what's happening down here. But if you haven't been here for very long, you won't know what a grand moment this is. There is a clip of me somewhere on the internet saying, I don't like books set on boats. That's a real thing that I said one time. Granted, it had to have been like 7 years ago, but still. It was cute, it was fun. There was a talking rat, there was curses, and Tress had to figure out how to like break a curse. She was really on this great journey. And not just her, but other characters like discovered, you know, what they're good at, that they're capable of more than they thought, that they're more worthy of things. Like it was a great arc to follow for many different characters. I'm chopping lemons now, so you know what's happening down here. And I'm certain that if I knew about the other books in this like whole universe and I saw all the Easter eggs and I understood everything, not that my rating would be higher, but it'd be even more of a fun read, I'm sure. And if I didn't see like the reveal coming and if I got to have that shock moment, that I talked about earlier, that I had like a prediction or a theory about something, yes, that turned out to be true. Without reading others' reviews, I can't know if that is really something that a lot of people were surprised by, if it was meant to be a surprise. As a thriller lover, I'm just saying it would have been fun if I got to have a moment of surprise. Anyway, there was a couple things that I highlighted. I'm covered in lemon juice now, so I really shouldn't grab my book. But I remember there being a quote I really liked. We want to imagine that people are consistent, steady, stable. We define who they are, create descriptions to lock them on a page, divide them up by their likes, talents, beliefs. Then we pretend some, perhaps most, are better than we are, because they stick to their definitions while we never quite fit ours. The truth is, people are as fluid as time is. We adapt to our situation like water in a strangely shaped jug, though it might take us a little while to ooze into all of the little nooks, because we adapt. We sometimes don't recognize how twisted, uncomfortable, or downright wrong the container is we've been told to inhabit. I love that. Anyway, while I'm cooking, I'm gonna grab the audiobook of The Center, and that's what I'm gonna read next.
The Center by Aisha Manazir Siddiqui. In this story, you're following a woman named Anissa who ends up hearing about this exclusive experience where you can go to this place called The Center to learn a full new language and become completely fluent in it in a very short period of time.
You're only allowed to ever tell one person about it. That is the person that you recommend, and you are never allowed to ever tell anyone about it. So he has now used up her as his one person, and she's intrigued. She wants to translate fiction, and she's like, oh, this would be so great for me because I'm going to be able to learn more languages, more opportunities to translate literature, and she decides she wants to go to the center, and things go from there.
So this first video in the series has already gained 1 star towards its score, and I feel another one coming. I'm halfway through. Right now it's a 5, and I'm exclusively listening to the audiobook, which I never do, but I'm really loving it. This feels like kind of a mix of Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas, which was 5 stars, Natural Beauty by Ling Huang, which was 5 stars, Babel by R.F. Kuang, which was 4.5, and then there's some kind of quality about the narration style that stay with me is reminding me of Death in Her Hands by Ottessa Moshfegh, which was also 5 stars. Obviously, because these are about translation, that's what makes me want to compare them, and that really is all they have in common, because this is obviously like dense, fantasy, historical, a lot of footnotes, but they both do also have commentary on like race and privilege in some ways. So our main character is Pakistani and she speaks Urdu and she translates books, and it's fun because we get to hear about some of the books that she's translating and learn about them. And then when she goes to the center, she wants to learn German, and then she starts translating German books, and then she decides it's a very intriguing idea and she gets pulled back in. It's a very expensive thing to participate in. There are a lot of rules, and what I expect from this second half is that she's gonna get pulled into it even more, spend more time at the center, because right now she's in and out of it. Like, you go spend however many days there, 10 days, and then you go back to your normal life. But there are people and experiences that make her want to return. And I wonder how far it's gonna go and what she's gonna learn about this place. There's also like a side theme about connection, because you're completely isolated for this time and she is so desperate to like speak to another person. And I think it's saying something about social media, our obsession with social media, our obsession of always being like connected and online. It doesn't quite have the hazy quality that Catherine House does. It's more clear cut of what is happening. But I do wonder if it's gonna descend into like Mona Awad territory that just gets very unclear for Anissa of what's real and what's not. I want it to go there, but I also like that it has the quality of Natural Beauty where it seems as though she's completely clear-minded and everything is cut and dry, but then we come to understand that things are more ominous than even she recognizes. I'm so sad. It's 11 p.m. I've been up since 5 and I have to go to bed, so I want to finish it so bad, but maybe it's good to take a break and return to it tomorrow and not just like marathon it all in a couple hours. All right, not really sure how to talk about this one. It is getting a star. The video is a success. I'm having a great time. This was a 5. I don't know that I would recommend it really broadly. Actually, what is the average rating? I feel like it might be kind of low. A 3.4. Yeah, in my mind, the author has intentionally written pretty controversial, perhaps potential representation. I also think the pace of this is not something that will work for everybody because it's not wholly focused on the center. There are so many other scenes that feel, I could see other people saying to be unnecessary, because I've read a lot of books with this same pace, categorized the same way, that I love when we're going down mundane paths and you're just talking to a friend and drinking tea for 50 pages instead of getting into like the nitty gritty of it all. But then there are also these uncomfortable sexual encounters. We have a main character who is ever present in like sad girl lit fic, the kind of apathetic at times, self-absorbed, unkind to their partner, but kind of like unaware of the effect that they're having on people through a good portion of the book. And I just overall love the scope of the center. This might get into spoiler territory. I don't know. If you don't want to know anything about this, just skip ahead until the next title screen. But in a lot of books like this, the idea gets so like global, and that's where it sometimes loses me, when it's like the entire wealthy and elite and rich and famous are all part of this giant scheme. And you get a sense early on that this is a small operation, just based on who she's able to interact with at the company and how early in the stages of this developing language thing that they seem to be. And it remains intimate. It's about this small group of individuals and the thing that they've created. Yes, there is this sinister thing going on, but it's not this global entity that it could have become. They themselves make mistakes. They could potentially be easily penetrated. They're not all powerful. It's just this idea, just this thing that they have begun. And I think it had to stay that way because a lot of issues you might have with how she gets to learn about things and where she ends up, and how she doesn't get found out doing certain things. Like, it wouldn't be reasonable if it was this huge, like, all-seeing corporation. It was bold and it was gutsy and it was weird, and I don't think that this has a lot of broad appeal. I'm so glad it exists and people have put it in their favorites, and that I got the chance to read it for this video. So, another win under my belt.
What a Match by Mimi Grace. Our main character, Gwen, she is just like in this place in her life where she's like, okay, like I'm 30-ish now and I am tired of being alone and the dating scene is just not it. So I need some professional help, aka a matchmaking service.
I officially have all the books for this video. I'm gonna try out, I think, the first chapter of both of these today to solidify that decision, but I'm currently reading What a Match. And I just want to talk about this cover for a second because, like, Lenny Kaufman never misses. She's incredible. She makes me wish it was fall. These outfits, I want to look like this. Don't look at my nails. I need to get them done so bad. Besides the fact that this man supposedly has broken his nose 6 times and like I don't see that, this is a 10 out of 10 cover. I love it. So it kicks off with meeting this woman who is like a really typical protagonist who is very analytical, and she thinks that if she meets the right guy who has this list of qualifications that checks off her list, it's going to be her perfect soulmate. And traditionally the whole intent of that is that we follow her as she begins to loosen up and you know, invite other things into her life she might not have thought that she wanted. All of that's well and fine. I want to understand where this book is set, because I can't find anywhere that says Mimi Grace is Canadian, but I swear this has to be set in Canada. But if she is Canadian and she's still like isn't using the proper terminology for hockey, like I don't know how to feel, because she's clearly using like baseball and football terms for hockey, and not just from her perspective, who like doesn't know a lot about hockey and in the first chapter gets invited to this hockey game on a date with this guy that her matchmaker set her up on. Even he at the game is like using baseball, football words. Then she referred to hockey as the national sport, and like that's not even technically the national sport of Canada, but it's more so our national sport than America. And then they went to Chili's for dinner, and I was like, okay, so this is either set in any state in the States or specifically in like Calgary, Alberta, where I think the only Chili's is in Canada. Canada would check out though, because I feel like another cover of hers that I was actually more interested in and had on my TBR before this one, it looks like it's probably like the Rockies, like Banff, those kind of vibes. I guess this is part of a companion series. I obviously didn't read the first book, but I think it featured her brother. So her brother and this guy own a boxing gym. They're just getting it started, and she is a teacher, and she's just going on all of these dates and getting very analytical about these dates when something goes wrong with his apartment and her brother invites him to sleep on her couch. And already I'm into it because he changed like a battery in her smoke detector the first day he was there, and he like stayed up one night because he was worried that she wasn't home yet. Not in like an overprotective, like we're in a relationship kind of way, but just like very aware of his surroundings and like feels a natural protectiveness over her because he has known her for a very long time. He's already into her from page 1. They don't really see each other much because they work long hours, and she's always out on dates literally every single night on a different date trying to find the one. So it's cute that they're kind of like getting to know each other just based on what they leave behind in the apartment. I'm liking it. We'll see what happens once it gets steamy, because I did notice an author's note that says this book contains a number of sexually explicit scenes. So wish me luck keeping my cringe levels low. I know for a fact some of you were questioning my decision. Some of you were sitting here in front of your computers going, why did you not pick a thriller? Why didn't you pick a horror? What are you doing? But do not fret, my friends, because the video's getting another star. If we kick this whole series off with this being like a 5-star video and every video just has to match it and there's no potential to beat it, like obviously it's good for me, but it's not the most exciting for the concept. But here we are. Deja did it. This I'm giving a 4. I haven't given a romance a 5-star in over a year now, at least a contemporary romance, but this is one of the closest moments that I've gotten. And it's really just the characters. We didn't get enough of their personality and enough of them actually behaving like individuals and not just like two people placed in this romantic love story. Yes, they had careers, and yes, they had conversations with other people, and yes, there were scenes where they didn't just discuss each other, but I loved them as a couple more than I love or care about them or know them as individuals. It was simple. There's not too much drama, which I'm very glad for. It was by no means a rom-com, but it wasn't too serious. It didn't get dark. I think my biggest comp tonally would be Sweet Hand by N.G. Peltier, which I did give 5 stars. Sometimes they got into these wacky scenarios that felt leaning towards rom-com, but they themselves were not joking and wacky. And I feel like the best thing about this book was the consistency of the characterization, because I'll die on the hill if you give me a silly, wacky, funny, banter, love interest, if he does not carry that energy into the bedroom scenes, like, you lost me. This guy was serious and passionate in regular everyday life and in those scenes. It felt very fall. There was a pumpkin growing contest they attended. The forced proximity was definitely fun and what drove them together. I just definitely recommend this. Only a couple of my friends on Goodreads have read it, so more of you need to pick it up, please, and thank you. If you took my recommendation for Sweet Hand, you can also take this one. I will be reading more from Mimi Grace, which I'm so excited about because this one looks so up my alley. It has something to do with like owning a wilderness survival camp or something, and I want to read that. Happy to be here. Booktubers have solidified themselves at, I mean, there's no competition yet, but they are at the top of the ranking.
A satirical story about academia, about being an Asian woman specifically, and dealing with sexism, fetishism. It talks about interracial relationships, and there's hallucinations, there's waffle dogs, waffle hot dog.
Let's decipher the plot of this one. So we have our main character, Ingrid. She is a PhD candidate and she's writing about this super famous poet. She's been researching him for years and years and years. There are a lot of things going on in this book plot-wise and a lot of things this book is saying. She is in a relationship that seems to be perfect, but she's gradually finding out things about him and their relationship dynamic that she doesn't know if she likes. And then she's figuring out things about herself and her friendships. She has this one friend she's really close to. She also has this kind of rival academic, and the whole book is about learnings and discovery. The main focus is her discovering things about the poet and deciding if she should even, or anybody should be learning about him, touting him as this great artist, thinker. And it feels like a mix of like Yellowface and The Sellout. Sometimes, most often than not, satire really works for me. Occasionally it doesn't. I don't know if it's doing it for me in here. I also never finished The Sellout. I didn't love it. Along with the discovery stuff, it's kind of her discovering, in a way, racism and Yellowface as a 30-year-old Asian American woman. I've been reading it all throughout the weekend. We had a couple hockey games. Liam's team lost one and then absolutely crushed another, which was good because we drove kind of far. I'm 162 pages in now. I did also read the first chapter of whatever that other one was called. Here it is, Scorched Grace. Neither of the first chapters really did a lot for me, but I decided to just commit to this one, and now I'm wondering, did I make a mistake? Should I have read this one? There's nothing wrong with it. I just find myself like not really being interested in picking it back up and continuing every time. But we'll see. I've heard it has a really like surprising ending or annoying ending, frustrating, like something happens at the end, so now I want to know that. Also, it's fun to read because you get to learn about like the reason why each individual thing on the cover is on the cover, because they all mean something and some of them are funny. Anyway, I'll check in with you later today. I really want to finish this today because I need to move on to the next one if I'm gonna keep up with this video project timeline. All right, I don't think I need to cover any more of the plot of this. I'm gonna go ahead and say it was clever. I can recognize that. It tackled a lot of issues and I respect that. It was absolutely unhinged in its final section. just like over the top silliness, which is kind of what the whole book was leading towards. I really didn't find it interesting. I didn't find it funny. And outside of this video concept, one, I would have DNF'd it, but two, I would have just been able to call this a 3 and call it a day and say, respect a lot that it did, but it didn't do the most for me. But I still had a fun, like I finished it. But I don't think that in this video, at this moment where the stakes are high, I don't think I can call it a 3, because that would imply that I liked it and that it's getting half a star and that the video ranking is going up. And I just don't feel like that's the right way for me to classify this read. So I'm gonna call it a 2.9. There's no rounding on my channel. A 2.9 is under a 3, and therefore it is not changing the grade of this video. Booktubers currently still have a solid 3 stars. I think Jess and I have a lot in common when it comes to satire. This one just didn't land for me. I will go forward and take a ton of her recommendations, I'm sure. But we're gonna move on and see how Lone Women fares.
A Black woman whose family has been homesteading in California. This is also sort of like Westernish or like frontier-ish in the US, but she is going to Montana because she's heard that that is like the only state where a lone woman can have can get a homestead just by herself without having to be married. And she has this big trunk that's with her. We don't know what's in the trunk. We don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of really rich metaphor in this.
So the book opens in 1915, and our main character, Adelaide, is fleeing from her family home. Her parents are left inside the house dead. She's gonna burn the house down, and she's fleeing with her trunk. So she is on this desperate mission to be free. I've gotten quite far into it before updating you. I didn't really know what to say about it. It's one of those constantly moving plots, but I don't know that Victor LaValle writes or does character work in a way that you're supposed to really connect and understand and love the way the characters are written and all of the relationships. It's more just a journey of finding out like what's in the trunk and what the secret is. But it's taking a while to get there, and I think because the only other thing I've read from him was a novella, I'm fine with the pace because it feels really similar to that, where there's just a lot of low-lying action scenes, and I imagine it's going to get like ridiculous at the end. I just have a feeling, because it hasn't been particularly horrific at this point, the genre that it's in. I can imagine where it's going. Basically, Adelaide is given the opportunity by the government to be a lone woman, and you have to like prove that you can take care of and tend to this land. And if you do it for a certain amount of years, then you finally can claim ownership of it. And there's like no other Black women where she is going. So she's building all of these relationships and coming into contact with various people who are against her or support her. She clearly wants to leave her past behind and start fresh, but she can't do that because there are certain things like haunting her. And the synopsis does imply something about the trunk unleashing some type of entity or ability to make people vanish. It's definitely been interesting up until this point. I feel like depending on the ending, it could be a 3 or a 4. I'm sitting here waiting for Liam to get back from a snowshoeing expedition. How fun does that sound? So maybe I'll finish it. This is shorter than it looks. It's actually only 70 more pages. Okay, summing up this book is not easy. There's a lot of things that I could talk about that I feel like would spoil the book. It does indeed get bizarre at the end. There are things you find out, there are things you don't find out, there are things that are implied that you can take away as messages from the book. It is bleak for much of the novel, but it also has some warm elements at the end, which I appreciate, and it's this story of redemption. I think it fits best into light speculative suspense historical fiction. That's how I categorize it. There's some different POVs offered, which keeps it interesting. It's super atmospheric. It has that going for it for sure. I've gotten more into Westerns in the last couple years, and I definitely appreciate that more recent releases in that genre area are diverse, so it offers something different. I don't know my rating. Yes, I do. It's a 3.5. It had a lot of good qualities. It wasn't the most interesting thing I've ever read. I think a lot of people would have a lot of great takeaways from it. I feel like there is the opportunity for me here to critique my own book choices. Honestly, like, because I've read Victor Villava, and 3.5 is not bad, right? It's getting half a star. So here's the final ranking of this video. It got 3.5, which might be the best that we get. So I'm on a high for sure. But I think because I read from this author before, I also read from this author before, so that maybe makes an impact for how these videos are gonna go. But fear not, every single video in the series is going to have authors featured that I have enjoyed before. So they're all pretty even. But because I didn't foresee myself not liking this in any capacity, I think Mara is the one who I probably didn't take enough time picking something out I might really like, because if I'm being honest with myself, of all of her videos and all of, well, I guess you saw it too, the things that I mentioned, none of them were horror that we had in common. It was other things. And not that this perfectly fits in horror anyway, but Mara and my horror taste is where we align the least. And I didn't want to acknowledge that in the moment because I really wanted to read Lone Women. So perhaps I made an error, but ending it at 3.5 is really good. I had a 5-star in this video. I had multiple 4 stars in this video. I didn't absolutely hate anything that I read. And I think this was the perfect kickoff to the series in the end, because there's the opportunity to do better and there's the opportunity to do worse. Anything could happen from here. Let me know if you can tell what any of the pixelated covers are in future episodes. And I'm gonna see you in just a couple days with the next one. So look out, Bookstagram. 9, 10, 11 in common. Now what I have to choose from for her is a horror, a fantasy. I'm not sure what that one is. I think it might be YA though. I hate this cover so much, like desperately hate this cover. My favorite horror is not the splatterpunk variety. What an absolute range of emotions I just went through.